Good evening. It being 6 o'clock, I'll call to order 6:30. My Zoc time. I'll call to order at 6:30 p.m. on December 10th, 2018, a special meeting of the electors of the Oregon School District. We're at the Oregon High School Innovation Center. I have proof that this meeting of the electors has been appropriately noticed under Wisconsin open meeting laws and would have proof of that with Katie Heights, if anyone wants to examine that. This is a special meeting of the Oregon School District. We're required by state statute to have a meeting of the electors for an annual meeting and to for any purchase of real estate. And this meeting is scheduled to purchase two parcels of land in the Oregon School District. We're going to conduct this meeting according to rules of parliamentary procedure. We have an agenda for the meeting that will be our guide, and there will be sample motions that will be projected on the screens in the meeting room as we get to the appropriate time during the course of that meeting. Before proceeding, I want to introduce the members of the Oregon School Board here. This is not an Oregon School Board meeting, although we're aligned in our normal Oregon School Board seats because we have a meeting afterwards, but it is not a meeting of the board. But Courtney Odorico, Troy Pankratz, Dan Kraus, Krista Flanagan, Tim LeBrun, and Barb Feeney are all here representing the Oregon School Board. We need to elect a chairperson for the meeting, and I would open the floor to nominations for chair.
I would nominate Steve Zoc.
Are there any other nominations? Steve Zoc's been nominated. Are there any nominations? Any further nominations? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close nominations and to cast a unanimous ballot for Steve Zoc to chair the annual or the special meeting.
I move to close nominations.
Okay. Troy Pankratz with the motion. Is there a second? Tim LeBrun. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries, and I will be chair. I will appoint Gina Jonan, District Legal Counsel, as our parliamentarian for the meeting. We have two items of business for the special meeting this evening. One is to purchase real estate pursuant to the appropriate Wisconsin statutes for the future school district buildings and to provide for the erection of suitable buildings thereon. And one is for approximately 106 acres of land at the address of 4930 County Highway M in the city of Fitchburg, and then approximately 1 acre of land adjoining to that at the address of 1772 County Highway MM in the city of Fitchburg. The second item is to purchase real estate under the same statutory criteria for building of an elementary school and to provide for a building on that parcel consisting of a little bit more than 12 acres of land in Dane County, which are outlots 12 and 41 of Terra Vesa on County Highway MM in the city of Fitchburg. And to more appropriately introduce that subject matter, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our superintendent, Dr. Brian Bussler, who will do a brief overview of that purchase. Dr. Bussler, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, community members, to tonight's special electors meeting. Just to give you a lay of the land, we have about 10 to 12 PowerPoint slides that we'll walk through quickly to share information with you, and then open it up for the floor to ask any questions that we have. So I have a very unusual a clicker tonight where actually down is up. So if I go the wrong direction, you will know why. Here's a summary from our Student Growth Population Task Force that was commissioned by the board in January of 2017. And this is a picture of the school district map from south to north. South, you'll notice, is Brooklyn, and to the north, the city of Fitchburg. You'll notice two areas, I'll say, around the Village of Oregon and around the Lacey Road interchange. Those were the two areas where the Student Growth and Population Task Force suggested that we look for property. So we analyzed property mainly in these two regions and areas. The task force did not make a recommendation to us outside of, I'll say, the age-old recommendation where it's always smart to build a school near your density of population, which helps us reduce transportation costs. If you're familiar with our website, this is a report where this particular map came from. It's called the Community Growth and Projections Report. The district hired MD Roffers Consulting, who completed the report for us, and this map is contained in this particular report that's on our website. When we look at the elementary and middle school sites, we have them highlighted with a star. And looking at the map, again, I'll start in the northern part of the district. As you go to the top of the district, that is the city of Fitchburg, and the elementary site is around the Lacey Road interchange. And then when you go to what I would describe as the center of the district with the second star, that is the site on the northernmost portion of the village of Oregon, where it becomes the city of Fitchburg. You'll notice our various schools sprinkled throughout, and if you look at this from a symmetrical standpoint, you'll notice we are a narrow and long school district. And with that narrow and long school district, Brooklyn Elementary School is our southernmost point, and it was interesting how many community members mentioned to me that they were surprised that Rock County was part of our district. We actually have 3 counties, Rock, Greene, and then of course Dane County. We have this very same map on the pullout that we used in our over 60 to 70 presentations, and if I've placed the star in the right spot, it should match the star that you see on the PowerPoint slide. Now taking a look at the elementary school site. Just to orient yourself to this map, in the center you can see Highway 14 and the interchange. This is sort of a blown up version of the Lacey Road interchange. And then as we move to the right, you see the star where it says elementary school site. That is part of the Terra Vesa development. And the Terra Vesa development is one of several developments. It is the largest development in the city of Fitchburg, and the school site in question is the northern portion of the Terra Vesa site. I'm going to move us to another picture of the site. Here's another aerial view of the site. You'll notice the Lacey Road interchange going down the left third of the picture. And then as you move to the right, you'll notice the subdivision. And the subdivision here is rather significant. The Terra Vesa subdivision is close to 18 to 2,000 dwelling units once it gets to complete build-out. Here is our school site, which is just under, or just a shade over 12 acres. Here again is Lacey Road and the Lacey Road interchange. You'll notice the road will get extended, and then we will be sitting right here in that northern portion of the Terra Vesa site. Here are a few key points on the elementary site. As I mentioned, it's 12.1 acres in total. It's part of the Terra Vesa development. The land cost has been negotiated for that 12-acre site at $926,080. The road development cost is $250,000. I'm going to click back to the site for a second. The district will be paying for a portion of the road right in front of the school site. That's a very common practice in school development. And then the last, and this is a really critical piece, the infrastructure connections to the site, sewer, water, electricity, natural gas, they are already included in the land cost of $926,000. That really shifts land costs significantly, whether the infrastructure is included or not included. When we did a comparison, this puts our price at just under $90,000 on a per acre basis. And in Dane County, as we did our study, we learned there are sites in Dane County that are up to $135,000 fully developed. The range is right around that $100,000 range. And then the last key point with the elementary site is it is close to student growth. You saw the 1,800 to 2,000 dwelling units right around the Terra Vista site. Here is the middle school site, and I'll give you a really quick orientation. This is the first exit to the Village of Oregon. This is McDonald's. You've driven past on Highway MM numerous times, and you're looking to the east. This is a future middle school site. That site is owned by the Donaldson family. It totals 107 acres. It has been used for various agricultural purposes over the last many years. If we're authorized to purchase this site, we also have the opportunity to offset some of the purchase cost until we build on the site with an agricultural lease. And I believe the agricultural lease on an annual basis is around $30,000. I know Gina was double checking that today. Okay, I hit it. So that will provide us some rental income that will help us offset the purchase price. Again, when we use these gold limits around the site, it totals 107 acres. Here's a few key points. Again, the total acreage is 107. It's along the Highway 14 MM interchange. It yields a land cost of just over $2.1 million. It allows for future district land needs, and that is always a key consideration for the school district. It's centrally located for our north and south middle school plan, and if you attended one of our meetings, we talked about what's currently called Oregon Middle School, serving the southern portion of our district, and then the northern portion of our district being served by the second middle school. We have two suggested resolutions. The first resolution is for the elementary school, and it lists the parcel. And the second resolution is for the middle school. It actually is broken into two different lots. There's a 106-acre parcel and a 1-acre parcel to combine those two together.
Thank you, Dr. Bussler. Do any of the electors have any questions for Dr. Bussler regarding the proposed purchases of land? Okay, I do not see any questions, and so I think we should turn to potential resolution or motion number one. Brian, could you click it back to the first one? Okay.
I had heard that one of the sites is in close proximity to an area that's considered a conservation area, and that it might allow some access from the school to the area that's a conservation area for the enhanced learning of the students. Can you show that on your map?
Yep. Brian's got the slide up right now. The question for those who are viewing on TV is the elector had heard that there was on the elementary site a proximity to a nature area, and Dr. Bussler is going to show us that right now.
Yeah, again, this is the elementary site. Here's Lacey Road, the interchange, Highway MM, and I'll call it light green, where it says school site. And then next to it, sort of a mixed green, and you can see five oak trees. The developer has called those the 5 heritage oaks in that site plan, and this is a conservancy that will be deeded to the city of Fitchburg. So the district will have conservancy space immediately adjacent to our school property. You also look in this portion of the Terra Vesta development. There's a lot of green space. This is a 450-acre site, and my recollection is it will only 250 acres of that will be built on. So there's some natural connections to our environmental programs throughout the district. Thanks for your question.
That answers the question very well. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions from any of the electors in attendance? Okay. The first motion that we're looking for is with respect to the elementary site, which is in the Terra Vista subdivision. And the recommended motion was to authorize the Oregon School District to purchase real estate pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 120.082C, 120.105M, and 120.13, 18 and 20, and to designate the site for a new elementary school building and to provide for the erection of suitable buildings thereon pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 120.105. Spoken like someone who does this every once in a while, right? So, and that would be for approximately 12.095 acres of land consisting of parts of Dane County parcels 225/0609-121, -2200-2 and 225/0609-121, 0050-2, which are parts of outlots 12 and 41 in Terra Vesta as recorded in the Dane County Office of the Registers of Deeds located in the northwest and northeast quarters of the northeast quarter of Section 12, Township 6 North, Range 9 East along County Highway MM in the city of Fitchburg, Dane County, Wisconsin. So that's a recommended motion. Is there anyone who would make that motion of the electors? And to be elector, you have to be over the age of 18 and a resident of the Oregon School District. And state your name and address, please.
Amanda Peterson, 301 South Main Street. I'll make the motion as stated.
Okay, we need a second to that motion, and state your name and address, please.
Charlie Sessions, 381 Union Road, Brooklyn.
Okay. Is there any discussion regarding the motion on the table? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposed. That motion carries. So we've now authorized the board to purchase the property in Terra Vesta. The second motion is similar in terms of the statutory criteria, which I won't repeat, and this would be to designate a site for future school district buildings and to provide the erection of buildings thereon. And this is for approximately 106 acres of land in Dane County parcel number 225/0609-363-9501-2 with a street address of 4930 County Highway M in the city of Fitchburg, Dane County, and then 1 acre of land consisting of Dane County parcel 225/0609-363-8000-6 that has a street address of 1772 County Highway MM in the city of Fitchburg, Dane County, Wisconsin. That's a recommended motion. Is there anyone in the audience of the electors who would make that motion? Okay. Ms. Peter, okay, Ms. Betchen with a motion and Ms. Peterson with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. That leaves one more motion, and that would be to adjourn. But before I do that, thank you everyone for attending the special meeting and taking us one step further in terms of following our task force recommendation and board decision to plan for the erection of new schools in the Oregon School District. So I need a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
So moved.
Ms. Flanagan with the motion, the second. Ms. Oderico with the second. All those in favor to adjourn signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 6:49, and that ends our special meeting. And we will proceed now as a board to do our regular meeting for the night, but thank you to all the electors who attended. And you're welcome to stay and watch us as we proceed for our regular agenda this evening. All right. Yeah. All right, it being 6:50, I will call to order the regular meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education at the Oregon High School Innovation Center. Would you call the roll? Ms. Heitz.
Ms. Feeney? Ms. Oderico? Ms. Flanagan? Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Mr. Kraus? Mr. LeBrun?
Here.
Mr. Zock?
Here, board has a quorum. I have proof that the meeting has been appropriately noticed under Wisconsin open meetings law. We have a big agenda tonight. We need, in terms of action items, approved safety plans. We'll have a report on our audit and approval of that, to accept that. We have a recommendation from the policy committee. We will need to act on the electors' endorsement of purchase of property. We will have some feedback time on the student achievement reports. Dan has a item on the screen time in the New York Times article and some informational items. So I need a motion to approve the agenda as posted. Mr. LeBrun with the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Feeney with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Item A on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any items that any board member wishes to remove from the consent calendar?
I will just need to abstain.
Okay, and so you'll be able to vote on the balance of that with a notation made that you're abstaining on the minutes from the last meeting. Haven't been excused from that meeting. Anyone else in terms of removing anything? Then I would need a motion to approve the consent calendar. Ms. Oderico with the motion, Mr. Pankratz with the second. I would note that we have a number of donations this evening. You have a modified one up there that reflects a couple of additional donations. We have a $10,000 scholarship, community scholarship from the Bruning Foundation. The Oregon band band boosters have donated $16,500 to the Oregon band. Cindy Mealy, $150 for student needs. Litha and Bob Schenkenberg, $50 for general pool needs. The Methodist Night Circle, $324 for student needs. Anke Boudreau, $100 for art room supplies in memory of a family member who taught art. And Brad and Catherine Cooksey, $500 for students in needs. I also neglected to mention last time, I missed a couple. The Oregon Choral Boosters had donated $600 for choir concert polos, and the Knights of Columbus had donated over $800 for their special education department. Those were already approved, but I had, in summarizing them, I noticed I missed those. So we thank everybody who donates to our district and the tremendous amount of good that those donations do to our district and our community. With that, we have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. I don't think we have any contracts there, so I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor of the items on the consent calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries with the notation that Ms. Flanagan will be noted as abstaining from adopting the minutes of the previous meeting. That takes us to agenda item B, communications from the public. Board Policy 18004 has established the opportunity for members of the public to address the board. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board? Any member who wishes to address the board? And last call. We'll move to informational items, OEA report, and I don't see anyone from the OEA this evening. So Emily, that's you, student report.
Hi.
Hi.
All right, so we had our winter dance this past weekend on Saturday. It was actually something new. The sophomores decided that they wanted to have a winter dance. Something for the underclassmen, I guess, was like an extra dance because upperclassmen have prom. So yeah, it was actually really successful. They made some profit, and there were more kids there than we thought were going to be there. So yeah, it was fun. Lots of fun. Yeah.
Any questions of Emily? Okay. To action items, D1 and approval of safety plans. And Andy, I think you've got this.
I do have
Start
this.
with, okay.
You bet. Act 143 was an act that was put in place about a little over a year ago, and focused on safety. It actually created an Office of School Safety with the Department of Justice, and we've been working ever since then, or basically since last winter, to kind of put together our safety plans. We've been working with our first responders, both the police departments from Oregon as well as Brooklyn, and the fire departments and EMS units from those areas as well. What I have to my left is basically the copy of those plans. There are little differences between all of them. They're not perfectly identical, but there is a lot of recurring themes and sections in them. One plan is somewhere between 130 pages. High school is a little bit bigger than that because of the additional venues that we have in the building. Part of the requirements of the safety plans is that you have to have a safety plan for each outside entity area that you have too. So Mr. Carr has been working on that and trying to make that easy so that our game managers and those types of things have a way to contingency plans if anything would happen at those venues as well. So what we're looking for tonight, the Board of Education had the plans over the weekend to kind of peruse a little bit. I have them here if you want to look at them any more. But basically what we're looking for is approval. Act 143 requires us to have these plans in place and approved by January 1st, 2019. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them as much as I can. Basically, the plans are based on a template from Safe Havens International, which the state of Wisconsin kind of purchased that plan. It actually says on the cover page that the Department of Public Instruction purchased it, but obviously a function of the state government. And that's what I have for you.
Any questions of Andy Courtney?
Andy, in reading through this, it looked like in a lot of the drills and whatnot that the Oregon Fire and Police were involved. Were any of the other outlying municipalities involved in any of the drills? And, well, answer
Nope.
that question first.
We haven't done the drills yet with Fitchburg. That's who we're kind of reaching out to right now with the construction of the new elementary school. We've talked to them from the outside of the building and gotten their input, but we are actually working with the architect to get something set up for the interior parts of the building to go through the safety measures that we're building within the new school, if that's kind of where you're headed.
No, not really. Actually,
Oh.
what I was thinking was, in the event of something major happening, I would think it would be not just Oregon responding, that the other municipalities would also respond. And I was curious what the, triage isn't the right word, but like who's in charge of oversight and
You bet.
who responds to what, and if something happens at Brooklyn Elementary, for
Yep,
example.
Yep. So the plan talks about NIMS, which is the National Incident Management System. And basically, kind of the first responders, we would be kind of part of the NIMS component, but we'd be more of on the support side. The first responders who train in NIMS all the time, they would kind of take over. So it would probably be the jurisdiction of whoever, whether it be the fire or the police department of that school. They would be the incident commander and then kind of direct things from there. So they drill on those types of things. I'll also say that from the police department point of view, for their drills, they kind of move from district to district as a county, I think, a group of people, and then they do drills together during the summers. We've actually in discussions with them right now to see if we can have one in the high school for this next year. We did have one a number of years ago at the middle school where they drilled in our buildings for about a week is what they do. So they practice those things every year at different school sites throughout the county.
I have a second question, which is, I thought I read in this report that there were as many as 13 drills during a year recommended, like
Yeah,
9, 2, and 2. Is that right?
Sure. So
That is a lot of drills.
So some of those drills are fire drills. So it's basically once a month. There should be a drill once a month, and should be only 12. So if you found the 13, let me know. 9, 2, and 1. 9 fire drills, 2 safety drills, and 1 tornado drill. So it should be 12, and that would only be at the high school simply because this building is used every single month of the year. So we have summer school. In the past, we haven't done as many a real drill in the summer school. Going through these plans, we really should be. So we'll be doing a fire drill probably during summer school this year in order to get all 12 of them. The other buildings which are only really in use 9 to 10 months of the year, they'll have the same month. So basically, it's 1 drill a month.
Is that what we've been doing in the past?
Yes. Yep. For the most part, we've been doing the last couple of years. We've been doing those safety drills rather than you can sub a safety drill for a fire drill. So essentially, you have to have a fire drill every month, and except for the tornado drill, you have one in the spring that you can do there, and you can sub those out for the fire drill. So instead of doing a fire drill that month, you can do a safety drill or a tornado severe weather drill.
Troy, anything?
You started to answer this question, Andy, but regarding the new school, I would assume that you are considering some of the things that we've learned with these plans and the design of the new school. One thing that kind of stood out to me was the lack of out-of-sight areas for PE, for the PE rooms. So.
We're actually meeting on that Wednesday night this week to kind of talk to the PE teachers and with the Bray team. So that will be something that we'll be looking toward.
Okay. And then how frequently would these plans go through any updates?
So I think it's, as I said in the agenda item, this is going to be a work in progress. Probably in the next 2 weeks, we're probably going to find some things that we're going to want to tweak. It's just that we're required to have them approved each year. So my guess is there will be evolving plans. One of the nice things about Navigate Prepared, which is the system we're using to manage these things, these plans, is that yes, we have hard copies of them, and we probably will have a hard copy, but they actually allow us to update them, and then there's apps that we'll be rolling out to our staff members, so they'll be able to kind of go to our procedures, and it's called Flip Charts is the app, that they'll be able to kind of look at those things, and if we change something in the flip chart procedure, it's instantaneously changed on everybody's phone. So kind of the nice way of managing that, but every year you're going to see us coming forward to you. I don't know if I've been thinking about this actually in preparation of the meeting, if it would be better to do this in the summer rather than kind of the end of the calendar year, which is right in the middle of the school year. So my guess is I think we'll probably do this like in August next year so that we have the plan approved for the rest of the school year, if that makes sense. Sure. But we just, there was a lot of work to get these things together, so we spent or used that extra couple months this year to kind of get it together.
Yeah. So a couple other comments. I noted that at the high school we were able to clear the large common areas in 45 seconds or less, which I think is incredible. I mean,
yeah.
That's awesome. And then I'll also note that these are really reactive measures, and we obviously just know that we have other proactive measures with secure entrances and mental health support and identification. So.
Yep. Yeah, we've those should actually be in the plans in different places, but things that we could probably put in there just to be all-encompassing.
Yep. So great job. Thank you.
Yep.
Dan, anything?
Just one, or actually two questions. Andy, will these plans then be part of our annual audit that we have someone review our books? Will they also be making sure that we have these plans?
I don't know the audit process. Our regular auditors wouldn't be involved in that, but the DOJ is required in us to do this. The DOJ is officially one permanent position, so I'm not sure what their ability is to review these for 426 or 425 districts within the state of Wisconsin. They do have a bunch of temporary people that they've hired. I haven't heard of what their plans are to make sure that people are all doing this, but I can tell you that email chain last week that all the districts in Dane County, we get together occasionally and talk. Everybody is kind of having a meeting like this month. We're all trying to get everything kind of covered. So my guess is that there will be some type of process to kind of check off to make sure that we've done these things, but our auditors, our financial auditors, won't be involved in it. It would probably be more of a function of the DOJ.
So this is more of a requirement. This kind of follows up on Troy's question about updating these. It's more of a requirement to have it, and then probably the state is not going to be following up with us to make sure that these are updated. Would that be your take on this?
I can tell you that when we were going through the safety grants, what they were asking us to do is actually upload things to them. So they had a share file. So no, they don't maybe come and say, hey, show me the file on your bookcase or whatever. But what they were doing is they even made us upload, for instance, all our floor plans to all our buildings into a secure site that they have then at the DOJ. So my guess is, and I don't know this, but my guess is they'll probably ask us to upload something or certification or maybe something from the board president that says this happened this evening, or maybe minutes of this meeting.
So after your involvement with the creation of these, would you recommend that we approve them?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, you'll know my name's in there as somebody who gets a copy of it, so I'm not sure what affirmative obligation that puts on the president, which was one of the questions I'll have in a minute, because I may abdicate. Barb, any questions?
First of all, on the page from the high school, one of the things that we can improve upon, it says the next drill needs to evolve to unstructured times. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Eventually what we need to do is get into times where it's a little bit more difficult. So for instance, a passing period where there's not everybody's not in a certain place. Those are quite honestly just more complicated. There's more chances for how do we do that, and it'll be a learning process. I think a couple years ago we had a situation at Rome Corners, I believe, I could be wrong on that, where it was kind of a more difficult time, and there's a lot to learn in those periods. So that's what we're trying to move toward, is those times when all the students aren't sitting right next to a teacher.
Okay, thanks. And I want to make a comment. I appreciate all the staff who made comments on these. It's just helpful reading through to get a flavor for what was going on. My other question was, at Netherwood, I noticed that there were a couple teachers who commented that they just felt like they didn't quite know what was going on when it was, and I'm not asking you to respond to that. I'm just assuming you are going to address that when you go through the plans.
Like I just mentioned, every time we do one of these things, we kind of learn things that we need to do a little bit differently. And you have new staff. One of the things that there were things that we did that didn't work all completely, and so we've been going back and kind of fixing those things. So,
okay. And then one more question. As far as what happens here after school, for instance, when there are things going on in the gym, some of the time the coaches down there or the adults in charge would be teachers who sort of know the drill. But are there going to be times when we have coaches who are not teachers here and haven't been through the drill?
I would say that there is a chance that happens. We are mainly focusing on the school day right now,
right,
and then those school activities that were kind of under control. But as we get into kind of progress through the training process, we're going to have to start thinking about, okay, what do we do at practices at 7 o'clock at night if something were to happen?
Okay.
We're not quite there yet, but we know we got to get there.
Yeah, well, it looks like it was really well done. Oh, just one more question, sorry. As far as people who were out there observing, like looking through the windows to see was that the police department? I'm just curious.
Probably police. I'm not sure the comment you're specifically talking about, but when we do these drills, the police and fire department actually do go out and kind of look both from the outside and the inside, look to see if we can see anybody.
Okay, and they're doing the knocks on the doors to try to get people to open and that sort of thing. Okay.
Absolutely.
Tim? So as we have the strains of the national anthem in the background?
Yes.
That's appropriate.
Is part of the training those outside activity type training where it's a football game and there's a bleacher collapse or a fire in the gym or anything like that?
I can tell you the first responders have drilled for those things. We have not drilled for those, but I was here this fall when they were talking about, trying to remember, there was a violent act that happened in the bleachers, and the fire department and the police department were working together on how to evacuate people out of them. So they do those things, yes.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Yep.
Krista?
I just have a couple things. One is about the date of the most recent training. You have 93 staff members from OHS, and then the OMS and RCI. What percentage of our staff at this point in time has been trained, would you say?
So that specific training was related to, there's two components of it. The high school training was actually the Oregon Police Department doing a training, active shooter type, reaction type thing. The other two trainings were ALICE trainings, if you're familiar with that acronym. I did those trainings, and that was last spring. So again, kind of an active shooter type situation. I think we've done, with ALICE, over the last 5 years, I would say we're probably in the 80% range, only because we've had turnover and we haven't gone back to talk to those folks. So we are hoping, or are planning actually, in January to do RCI in the middle school with the Oregon Police Department. Both of those schools requested that training, and we just haven't quite gotten to figure out how to get that to the elementaries yet.
Okay. Then my other question, and again, these are amazing documents, and I probably missed it if it was in here, but a lot of times, like, these safety plans also have a crisis communication component.
Yep.
You guys do a fabulous job, and we've got the email today from Dr. Bustler about the drug dog search. But I think we know from things that have happened previous that people get on Facebook, and is there a accompanying plan that is a crisis communication plan in terms of how we handle getting the word out externally or beat the Facebook rush?
Yeah, Erica, the communications director, has gotten, I think, some sample plans. I'm looking for her. Oh, she's at the Brooklyn concert. I'm sorry. She actually, the Wisconsin Public Relations organization here in Wisconsin for schools have a manual that she's got, and so she's starting to work on those. These plans touch on it, but there's a lot more that needs to be happening with that. There's also some social media organizations. I think we'll be talking about that from a local school district, county perspective. I forgot the name of it. It's an acronym, but it's basically a nonprofit organization that kind of helps crisis situations with social media. And we did check with a local police department who checked with Dane County, and they don't have one yet, but we'll probably trying to start one up. And I can't remember it. It's like SOAP or something like that. It's the acronym. So there's just some tools that we could use in Dane County that we don't quite have yet.
And then I also saw Stoughton High School in there. Can you kind of touch on that in terms of our relationship with them related to this?
Sure. So if we had to take our students a significant distance away from, for instance, the high school, and since our high school is the largest facility, we thought, okay, where would we do that? And so we have a kind of an agreement right now. It's just a general person's agreement, but Stoughton would come to Oregon, Oregon would come to Stoughton, so that we have a large facility that we would be able to house our people if there was an extended period of time. We obviously have contingency plans outside of that, but if we needed to get out of Oregon, that's what we set up.
I had asked Dr. Bussell, I noticed in the plans where they referenced the dog detection, that they had talked about firearms and explosive devices, and I wasn't sure, because I hadn't heard that as one of the capabilities of the dogs that we had authorized, and I understand that that's been changed, and we're not our drug sniffs aren't detecting.
No, they don't. No, we actually touched that bullet item last week, and for whatever reason, we changed part of it, but not the other part of it. So my apologies.
Okay, so that's been changed and would be part of any motion that we make. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, so then I would entertain a motion to approve the school safety plans for all the buildings that have presented to us. I think we can take them as a lump. Ms. Feeney with the motion, is there a second? Mr. LeBrun with the second. Any discussion? while this was required by state law, I think it's always helpful to have an intentional, thought-through process to develop stuff, especially working with community agencies that will service this. They can be two-edged swords. We have detailed plans and ways to respond, but anybody who's been involved in emergency or a crisis knows that sometimes the best laid plans and training go awry, and so they're not a panacea. I sometimes worry when we approve 130-page documents that you're just creating yourself a liability problem, because if you don't follow a step in there, even if you're using reasonable care, you might get nicked. But it's good to have gone through the process. It's good to have the training for these type of events. So, would you take the roll?
Ms. Feeney? Yes. Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Zock?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Andy, and for everybody who's worked really hard at putting together these documents over the last 6 months, I think, for this.
Yep.
We appreciate it. They were really thorough. I wish I could say they made for interesting reading last night, but no offense.
Working on them at night it's a good way to go to sleep.
Yeah. All right, that takes us to item D2, which is the acceptance of our audit report. And Andy, you're...
Hey, come on, this is more interesting.
This is really interesting stuff. Okay, Andy, you're on.
All right. Every year I kind of struggle with what to share with you, but I always love talking about fund balance, because it's basically the main component to how we performed last year. And so I'm going to go right to the fund balance report for this. I will mention that from the audit perspective, we had an unmodified audit. So basically that means it's a clean audit. We had no findings from the auditors at all. And I would also point to you on the last couple pages of the agenda item, there's kind of a report card that our auditors came up with. It's a couple pages, and it talks about kind of all the different things that you should maybe work on. I was pleased, a little surprised that they basically said everything they looked at was great at the district. They couldn't find anything, and I kind of challenged them, and I said, hey guys, you got to find something. There's got to be some issue. And so we came up with a couple areas that we'll work on in the future, that I felt like we have some areas to work on. So anyhow, I will go back to the fund balance report, because that's the area that I thought was the most interesting of it. And I'm on the part where it has the orange that you can see on the screen here. Basically, the fund balance did go up this last year by almost a little bit over $1 million. A good part of that was related to assigned fund balance, which has been something that's kind of gone up for a couple of years. The non-spendable fund balance component went up because we still had our school construction home, and I had it sold before July 1st, and then the folks needed a little bit of extra time, so we actually sold it like the first or second week into the next fiscal year, which creates a little issue for us, but it's just non-spendable. It's not a big deal. It's still in fund balance, and then it became cash shortly after July 1st. Self-insurance fund, that's for our dental. That has been growing. Quite honestly, we haven't done an increase. We've only done one increase in our premiums. Since we're self-funded, we determine what that premium is going to be. It's been basically the same, except I think we had a couple % increases 2 years ago. The fund balance, or the self-insured component, is doing really well. So eventually, if that continues to grow, we might have to talk about rebating a little bit of the money back to our employees, because that's not what it's supposed to be. We have more than enough to meet where we're supposed to be. Assigned fund balance, small increases there. I talk about in the agenda item where those increases were. I really think that we're at the point where we're going to start seeing areas of the district start spending that assigned fund balance. but it is there. And then our unassigned fund balance, and this is the area that I focused on the most because it's really an indication of what's going on besides the carryover amounts and besides the house and besides the self-insurance. And you can see a small increase in that amount as well, which is a good sign. So kind of we went up $1 million, but it was kind of part of three or four different things that happened. So I would just jump around here. The next thing I wanted to mention was you can see the percentage bases for these fund balances, and just kind of to pull your attention to them a little bit. And the end of 17-18, our total fund balance did go up to 27.7 or 27.8%. Good thing there. But our unassigned fund balance actually went down a little bit. So if we didn't have those carryover amounts increase, our fund balance percentage would have gone down. And so that's something that we just kind of want to pay attention to a little bit. We do want our fund balance to grow a little bit in order to be able to address issues that happen when we don't have cash flow. Last board meeting, for instance, we did approve a line of credit in the district. That was mainly because of the referendum expenses that we've been incurring as we've been designing the school at Terra Vesta's school site, as well as the land purchase that we're going to do probably this Friday, that you, if you approve an agenda item in a moment or two. But those types of situations can happen, and so we need to make sure that we have the cash flow. And as we grow as a school district, we do need more money in the fund balance in order to deal with those things. The other thing I'll mention, and this is kind of something to think about, as we become more cash, as our assessed values increase per student, and our belief is that will happen, we will become more reliant on property taxes as compared to state aid. So it kind of shifts where our money comes from. And the state does different things during each biennium to kind of change when they pass. And so that creates problems for us until we get our property tax funds, which happens after the beginning of the year. So if we continue to get more assessed value per student, that continues to increase, our funding mix is going to shift more to a property tax shift than a state aid. In the past, we've kind of been right around that 50-50, but over the last couple of years, we've been moving a little bit more toward property taxes. That means our funding is going to happen at a different time, and so we need to have a little bit more money in the bank in order to cash flow through those months of November and December, really.
And that's part of the formula where we've become more of a tertiary, we've finally made
Yes.
that flip.
We haven't gone tertiary yet. We're probably about 4 or 5% still secondary level, which means basically that for every dollar we spend, we're still getting like 4 cents on the dollar back from the state, but we're getting very close to that
We've
tertiary
been
level.
watching that for about a decade, so we're not there
Over
yet.
a decade, yep.
Okay.
We're still not there. All of our neighbors are. I shouldn't say all. Our southern neighbors aren't, but Verona, Middleton, Waunakee, Madison for sure. They are all for sure there. What really saves us, and I didn't mean to make this into a school finance seminar, but what really saves us, quote unquote, is being a bedroom community. The majority of our homes have kids in them, and if you look at Roffer's report, the quotient that he talks about as far as the number of students per household is like close to 1. That really drives us, and then we don't have, and this is a negative from the city point of view, we don't have a lot of industry here in Oregon, and because we don't, the assessed value per student stays low. Where those other communities have higher values because they have some industry that doesn't necessarily produce students, and so they all of a sudden have higher amounts of money behind each student, and that pushes them into the tertiary. So we're not far from it, but we could be heading there soon. And absolutely, as we get into that tertiary funding, our state aid is going to go down a little bit faster, and we're going to be more reliant on property taxes. Other questions?
Andy,
Yeah.
we just approved that line of credit
Yep.
At the last meeting.
Yep.
And so will that line of credit, are you expecting that line of credit to get bigger and bigger each year?
So
as our budget
we only
gets bigger
approved
and
it for
bigger?
this year.
right.
My expectation is that if that we shouldn't need it next year. I think we have sufficient cash flow when we pay ourselves back through the referendum funds and replenish those funds that were used at this point for cash flow purposes to pay the architect and engineers, that we should be fine. It's just down the road. I think we want to start thinking from a strategic point of view that we might want to eventually get to an intentional point of growing that fund balance a little bit more. So
As opposed to
just-
borrowing for that short-term need
Right,
at
right.
the
Well,
beginning of the calendar year.
Yep, because otherwise, eventually what would happen is we would have to start short-term borrowing as a part of our regular processes as the district gets larger. And so, I think you want to grow that balance so it's proportional. And if you look at our policy, I'm forgetting the number right off the top of my head, but basically that's what the policy says, is that, I think it's in the 600s, that our goal from the district's perspective was to maintain enough fund balance so that we don't have to cash flow borrow. And that's very common now in in the state of Wisconsin. The DPI, after we used that as a goal, kind of picked up on that and used that as their sample policies for other school districts. A lot of districts don't have that, though, and a lot of districts do have to cash flow borrow.
Those with
When you're the acting clerk.
Yeah, Tim, when I started, we were borrowing every year $4 million, and that was interest operating cost against our annual budget. And so that's when we adopted the policy with Andy to set targets for our fund balance, and so we've met those. And it's one thing that Andy and I have talked about is our total expenditures increase. We'll need to pace our fund balance with that and intentionally budget to grow that fund balance a little bit so we don't incur those interest costs.
Okay.
Because it's cheaper in the long run to budget for a slight increase in your fund balance than to have to pay interest costs.
The other thing is those people that rate your bonds, Standards & Poor's and Moody's, they look at that as well. That's kind of one of their key indicators, is what percentage of fund balance do you have set aside.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else with questions of Andy? Okay, then Andy and I had talked this morning, and he said if anybody wanted someone from Johnson and Black to come present, we could make them available. We didn't think with an unmodified report that we needed to do that to explain anything, because this is an absolutely clean report from them. So, Tim.
Do we rotate through auditors?
We've changed 3 times since I've been here in 19 years, so we don't do it very often. We've been with Johnson & Block probably 7 or 8 would be my 6, 7, something like that. They've given us a competitive price, but if there's a desire from the board to shop or just check someone else, we can absolutely do that. It is nice, but I totally understand the rationale for wanting to move around every once in a while. Sure. It is nice that they know our systems and do an audit that doesn't really... the auditors today, they actually go right into our books. We don't have to pull invoices, anything. It's all digital, so they can do a majority of it right from their offices. So it's just nice that they know us, we know them, and how it works.
Sure. Just, as you mentioned, come on, guys, you got to find something.
Right.
There. Another set of eyes might be, just a learning.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
And that's one thing that we might want to think about if the board has any interest in that, to rotate through. We've been with Johnson & Block, and it took a while to develop, familiarity with systems, but rotation, sometimes a new set of eyes keeps you on your toes. So if that's something that interests board members, let me know, and we can talk with Andy about that. Okay. Other than that, I need a motion to accept the audit report.
Second.
Dan with the second. Any discussion? I just note that, we passed a budget a little while ago that had a decrease in our level rate and our mill rate. levy rate a little bit higher with the referendum, but the mill rate going down, and now we got an audit from last year showing that our financial processes are in order to the point where we don't have any notes, and it's unmodified report, which is excellent. So, the district should take heart that our financial ship is in order with this, and also that we're not resting on that we're looking at, down the road and keeping it that way. So we're talking about ways to, maintain our fund balance so we don't have to long-term borrow, that we're looking at post-employment benefits to make sure we keep our unfunded liabilities at a reasonable level, and we're looking at other things. So we're in a good spot right now. Thank you, Andy.
You bet.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the June 30th audit report signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thanks again for all the hard work.
You bet.
And the members of your staff who did that.
Absolutely.
That moves to item number 3 in the action items, which is 180, the meetings, and I'll turn that over to Krista, who is the chair of the policy committee, for a recommendation from that committee.
Thanks, Steve. This is regarding policy 180, which is meetings. We've had this discussion a little bit in terms of kind of addressing changing of the times where we may, at certain circumstances, allow board members to be part of a meeting when they are not here in person. The goal is to make sure that board members are here in person, but there may be extenuating circumstances where that is made not possible. So these amendments to this policy, which you hopefully have read through, kind of address what is allowable in terms of remote attendance. That we're kind of setting a limit on that, but that a board member cannot do that more than 2 times per calendar year. But there is an ability for the board by a majority vote to allow that more than 2 times. I will tell you that one of the discussions we did have in policy committee meeting, or in our policy committee meeting, was 180.02.1, which states a physical quorum must be present in person, meaning that there must be at least 4 board members in the room here in person for a board member to attend that's not in person. So there was some discussion about should we do that, should we not, but we did leave it in here that a physical quorum must be present in person. So that is the recommendation from the policy committee with these changes that you see here.
And that's a motion from the policy committee. It does not need a second coming from committee to modify policy 180 as identified. Are there any questions of Krista? Okay, is there any discussion about this? Dan?
As part of the policy committee, as Krista noted, we discussed whether a physical quorum should need to be present, and I was of the opinion that we could do a meeting without a physical quorum present. After discussion, it sounded as though we wouldn't get a consensus on the vote. So I said, why don't we discuss it further at the meeting? So I voted in favor of bringing this to the board. I think looking forward, considering the possible needs of the district to have a quick vote on something that needs attention before a state law takes effect or before a state law expires, something that we may not have realized. Also, we may need to act within a very short time where we would not be able to get a quorum together. Also, considering that there may be members of the board in the future who are not as able physically as we are, and we would not want to exclude someone who doesn't have an easy time getting out and about from being a member of the board if it's possible to bring them into discussions remotely, a member of our district. So I would like at this point to propose an amendment to strike 180.02.1 from the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the motion from policy. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion on that? I would jump in and on that, and I'm just gonna, I try to refrain from bringing my legal practice into this, and just because I don't like to do it. We have district legal counsel, but I've written on this one within the last 6 months for the school news as part of my job at the law firm, and looked at policies regarding the specific question, and looked at what the Department of Justice is saying about whether you need a physical quorum, and what Wisconsin Association of School Boards is recommending. The statute does not prohibit, as part of open meeting laws, remote attendance. But if you read the statutes regarding school board meetings in conjunction with the open meetings law, the best interpretation of those from the Department of Justice that we're getting from the Attorney General and WASB's advice is that they require a physical quorum to be actual present at the meeting, and then once that's established, there can be remote access. It's just the way the statutes are interpreted. So that's the recommendation out of Department of Justice and also WASB. Although the statutes aren't entirely clear on that, they're saying that's the best read of that. So, if my article, and I think the advice we give is that you should have the physical quorum present. Recognizing Dan's points that, in this world you may not need it. I just think under my read of stuff that we need a quorum.
A couple things. One, also for people that are watching, one of the things that was really important that it's in the policy is that board members may not remotely participate in any closed sessions, expulsion hearings, or employment-based matters, which I think is very important to note those things, that if a board member is remote, that they can't participate in those things. I think the other thing is a feel to me. I understand what you're saying, but I think at this point in time, and one of the things we did talk about in policy is maybe walking before we run. And so it feels right to me that saying that we have to have a physical quorum at this point in time, that we're kind of looking at this amendment and then seeing how it goes, and we may move to the step that a physical quorum may not be present, but I think this feels right to me that we are elected to be here and have face-to-face discussion and be on TV. So that's where I sat with that.
Gina, from your standpoint, legal standpoint, as our advisor, what's your position with respect to quorum?
So as I explained in the policy committee meetings, that I would agree 100%, Steve, with your take on it, that there's no case law specifically addressing the topic. But if you read the Attorney General's opinions, which are advisory, that it certainly seems to be within the spirit of the open meetings law to have a physical quorum present. And, it does comport with the advice that WASB is giving as well. And I have litigated 2 Wisconsin Supreme Court cases, won them both on public records law and open meetings, so I'm very confident on my opinion in this area. But if you wanted some outside advice, I could certainly seek that as well.
Just as a last point as well, that we talked a little bit about it in the apportionment conversation we had at the last board meeting. And I think if we had gone to a 5-member board, it may be more important to have that flexibility to be a quorum with, although someone may be absent and attending remotely. But with 7, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to come up with a quorum, an in-person quorum, and still be able to participate remotely, just not making it a quorum.
Gina?
I suspect the law very rarely keeps up with technology, so I suspect at some point there will be case law to give us guidance on this, but I would prefer we not be the district to set that, so yes.
And we can always make a new decision, right? So if we have someone that really brings it to bear that we need to reconsider this, we can always bring it back to the table.
And I can tell you just anecdotally, those districts that I know of that are adopting a remote participation policy are requiring a quorum and are adopting remote participation policy with the express understanding that physical presence is preferred because you're an elected official and because of the value that physical presence gives. So that's kind of a background there. Okay, so we have a motion to amend the motion from the policy committee, and the motion that's on the table, which has a second, and the motion is to delete 180.02.1 from the proposed changes to the policy. So a yes vote on that would be to remove the requirement of a physical quorum. A no vote would be to keep on the table the proposal with a requirement of physical quorum. Okay? Everybody clear on that? Okay, so please take the roll because we're dealing with a policy.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Feeney?
No.
Ms. Oderico?
No.
Ms. Flanagan?
No.
Mr. Pankratz?
No.
Mr. LeBrun? No. Mr. Zock?
No, so the motion to amend fails, which back on the table then is the motion to approve the recommendation of policy committee as set forth in our packet. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Mr. Pankratz?
I just had a question or clarification. Under 180.02.4, with regard to the closed sessions, does that really only pertain to matters where you have say a third party in the room, but it would not apply to just the 7 of us, 7 board members in the room?
So as I read it, as I read this, it would be if you were in a closed session, regardless if third parties were present, that you would not be able to participate remotely.
I think part of the concern, Troy, with having remote participation by closed session is the board that is in closed session doesn't know who's hearing on the other end. So there's a potential concern about the integrity of the closed session.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have a question? Any comments? Okay.
Turning off my
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the motion? Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the changes to 180 as set forth in our packet and the recommendation from the policy committee. And would you call the roll on that?
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Feeney?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Zock?
Yes. So we've modified 180 and we have the ability to attend remotely based on the circumstances. I know that came up when Courtney was called away unexpectedly when we had a critical vote, so that kind of brought that to the fruition. Great. Okay, that takes us to item 4, which is to purchase what we're calling the Donaldson lot, the 106 acres for the middle school, as approved by the electors tonight. I don't think we need to go into any detail of that. We would just need a motion to approve that purchase as identified in the agenda. Need a motion to that effect. Mr. Pankratz with the motion. Is there a second? Mr. LeBrun with the second. Is there any discussion? See, now this sets us up really well for our future planning and creates a great flexibility. That's right. It's really good. It must be halftime of that. Okay. Ms. Heitz, would you take the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Feeney?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Zock?
Yes, that motion carries, and we can undertake the appropriate steps to purchase that land. Number 5 is to purchase the land in Terra Vesa for our new elementary school, so I'd need a motion to that effect. Ms. Feeney with the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Pankratz with the second. And I think, Brian, you're going to give us a report on later on about the design process, so that's pretty cool too. So would you call the roll, Ms. Heights?
Ms. Feeney? Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico? Ms. Flanagan? Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Zock?
Yes, that motion carries, so we can undertake the purchase of that property. Discussion items, committee reports, policy, Krista?
We meet next at the beginning of January.
Great. Vision steering?
No, nothing.
Okay. Student achievement reports. We have some time on our agenda to provide feedback, and I think we can keep people in your seats, and then if we're targeting anybody, we can bring them up to the stand. So what I'm going to do is go around and see if anybody has any additional feedback on the student achievement reports. May or may not. And I'm going to start with Ms. Feeney over on this side. Nothing, Mr. LeBrun, any questions or feedback for the administration?
One thing that drew my attention.
Can you turn your mic on? Yep.
One thing that particularly drew my attention from Dawn's presentation, I don't know if Dawn's here, was trying to do more intervention activities in the classroom. And I know that I know you've had a very short period of time to try that, but I'm going to be anxious to hear how that's working. Mostly because I've heard from a number of people about the constant parade of people in and out of a classroom and how it can be distracting, and even though it's planned, it can be a little chaotic. So I'm going to be just interested to understand how that's going.
Great.
I think some of the challenges we face so far are the timing for teachers to meet
Turn the mic on right there.
Yes. There we go.
the timing of teachers to meet to plan those groups when we have 10 or 12 adults working at a grade level at a time, having time for all of those teachers to work with the paraprofessionals, the reading interventionists, math interventionists to really plan really good instruction for those students has been a little tricky. Teachers are meeting at their prep time, they're meeting before school, after school, so they're really using all of their resources and time the best that they can. But we're really finding some students are really excelling, and first grade just redid their groups. They did some new assessments. They shuffled their groups around. Some students that had math are now going to be in the classroom working on a different math intervention. So they're looking at that data every 6 to 8 weeks and looking what students really need the most at that time and moving students based on that. Our ELL teachers supporting students as well. So we've got lots of different things happening during those pilots of the 3 grade levels that we're doing.
Great. I can only imagine the coordination, that calendar coordination, even before you try to get a feel for the efficacy, is a big hurdle.
We have 2 paraprofessionals for each RTI block for grade levels, so we scheduled that at the beginning of the year knowing that these grade levels were going to be doing it. So there's been some challenges, but really they're seeing some great things for kids, some great growth. Parents seem to like it because all students are moving during that time and a student's not missing science or social studies because those are some of the things that we pull from traditionally.
Sure.
So they're not missing that. Everyone's getting what they need during that time.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Tim, you keep going on till you tell me you're done, okay?
Okay. There was one other thing. I think it was, let's see, somebody mentioned, it might have been Carrie, who mentioned that there's a parent engagement event every month. Is that, where is that happening? Is that? Okay, yes. And I'm just curious how that is going. I know it's great, especially when kids are young and parents are new at having kids in school.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if there's a way to continue that, to make parents feel more engaged and things like that. Are you getting good attendance? And is that something parents are starving for?
That's a great question. Our last event was last Friday, just a couple days ago.
We had a gingerbread themed event, which at the 4K level, very hands-on. We integrated literacy events, all different types of books at age appropriate 4K, 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. We built in coordination with our farm to school program with Jenna Sward coming in and trying different recipes with gingerbread theme. And then we had up to 18 families that came in for an afternoon with their kiddo. They stayed, they read books with their kids. We had grandparents, we had aunts, uncles, child care providers. In October, we had 50 to 60 different families in at the Netherwood gym for an evening. And then our 4K kickoff concert in September had, I would say, 50 to 60 families as well. It's a huge component of our 4K program. We're charged with at least the bare minimum outreach is 87 and a half hours. Bare minimum, and with our collaboration with Community Ed, we do a lot of partnerships with Community Ed, and we're exceeding 100 plus hours each year on average. I love the spirit of your question as far as really continuing that on into the K-4 setting. We are working really diligently with our kindergarten teachers right now, trying to figure out a nice cohesive transition plan as 4K kiddos transition into our elementary schools, and we hope to continue that spirit of engagement with parents moving forward.
Okay, great.
So, great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pass on. I'll come back if I have
Great.
more
Krista,
questions.
I'm good.
Okay. Courtney? Oh,
And I got to turn mine on. There you go. I guess I would just have 2 points to make. One is, which we heard when we were receiving the reports, which is our faculty, our teachers, our administrators know our kids so well. We should be really proud of the work that they do. We are really proud of the work that they do. And our parents should be really pleased at how in depth we understand our kids and their needs, and how hard we are working to meet all of those needs that have been identified through this process. The other point I would like to make is several of the administrators spoke about revisiting the definition of culture and character and community, in particular culture and character. And I think that's important work as we move forward, particularly in view of some of the things we've been hearing and that we know about in terms of mental health issues in schools and the number of behavior issues that we're starting to see more and more as there's more stress, outside stresses on families and on kids, and how that kind of trickles down into how kids manage their lives in school. So I'd like to see that piece continue to be developed. We've certainly been working on it. It's been kind of hanging out there over our heads for a long time, and we haven't really hit, I don't think, on a definition of culture that we're all really happy with in terms of these reports. So just would like to see that conversation continue.
Troy?
So this is the first time I'm sitting in this seat hearing these reports, so it's been really interesting for me. So what I learned is that we really have high expectations for our learners, and we're doing a really, really good job at meeting those goals that we set each year. One of the biggest concerns that I have in this position is letting students fall through the cracks. And I feel like we're doing a really, really good job at avoiding that we know our kids really, really well, and we do a great job teaching to their unique needs. One of the, I guess, big themes that I picked up on in all of the reports was really the focus on social and emotional, and that's, as we talk about all the time, it's very, very important during these days, so it was really interesting for me to hear all the work that we do in building relationships not only between teachers and students, but between the students and their peers. One of the things that really resonated with me was the work that we're doing on teaching the zones of regulation at a young age, because we're really seeing more and more demands on our staff on addressing behavioral issues at at the upper grade levels. And so to me, in theory, if we can work harder on teaching those zones of regulation at the younger ages, teaching students how to learn and what ways work best for them, in theory, that should help at the older grades. It's really that vitamins versus medicine mentality. If we can give the vitamins versus the medical treatment, I think everyone's better off. And so, on that note, I guess I'm interested going forward on how we might be able to change our staffing in order to increase opportunities to provide those student-teacher connections. And we're starting to talk through that in our staffing committee. But I think that's just something that we should all keep in mind as we move forward. Is how can we change the environment to help improve those relationships, as well as maybe lessen the burden on our educators. I think that's it. That's all that I had.
Dan?
I just had one question for the 4K administrator, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jackie. I appreciate all of the reports, and it's very helpful. The one thing that I'm not sure about is 4K is it's less centralized and it's put on by different places and not as tightly controlled, I think, by the district. Is there, and all of our other schools have what we call a green and healthy program. Is there anything like that with 4K? Also related to that, are there on-purpose programs that are outdoors, focused on getting the kids to have a familiarity and a love for being outdoors and with the trees and animals?
That's a great question. So kind of the spirit of our 4K program is play, and a lot of that is naturally built outside and using those opportunities to just get outside and have a love of nature. So part of that is just experiencing opportunities outdoors, and then naturally building in those teachable moments through part of our social emotional and also our literacy and math programming to be outdoors for a variety of reasons. Last year, under Mary Weber's direction, they took part in a healthy initiative with the Dane County, Amy Miller will hate me for slaughtering the acronym, but the Dane County Healthy Collaborative, and they went through and modified some of their health assessments and tailored that to a 4K level, and then they went through and each site completed the assessment to see what areas they were really strong in as far as healthy initiatives, both health-based but also activity-wise, and then worked through with each site areas of improvement that they could strive to better meet their needs of their kids. So while it's not a green and healthy initiative label, they really focused on that a lot last year. I think moving forward, now we know where those areas of improvement can be, and then tailoring in our mindfulness initiatives last year. Moving forward this year, teachers are running with it, building in that social emotional component, but also the mindfulness piece, bringing in our local practitioners for areas for really little minds to be experiencing healthy practices with activity, but also health. So, great question. You're welcome.
Thanks to all the administrators who took the time to really develop meaningful presentations to us. We know that it takes time from your normal workday load to come before the board and make a presentation to us, and spend time over the summer to work on these reports. But it's really a critical part of our oversight responsibility as the board to get a feel for what you're doing in the schools. And I can speak on behalf of all the board members that it's very valuable to us and meaningful to us. And the time that you take to put the information to us is valued by the board. And, what you're hearing from the board is that it gives us good information, and I think when the public hears us, they understand that truly every child in this district matters, and that you're tracking every child in this district to make sure that they succeed. That came clear to me both when I was the one night I was here in person, and then when I watched it on digital cable access. So that comes through loud and clear, and you should be proud of that fact. And I think the district, that's reflected in the fact that this district votes for 3 referendums at 65%. You don't get that vote if they don't think that their children aren't being taken care of. So, our support is based on the trust that district has in you. So thank you very much. The one thing that I always struggle with, I really like this as a marketing tool, and you have a limited amount of time before us to give us a presentation of the data that you've spent a lot of time looking at. I'm more of a give me more rather than less sort of thing. This really works good, and what I heard was really good. I struggle with wanting to know more and to delve into what you guys have looked at and know that, so I've got to figure some way to satisfy my urge for more numbers. One of the things I've talked about over the years is I think we've settled on or you guys have settled on a pretty comfortable range or in the competency, a pretty comfortable metric for determining how our kids are being successful amidst a myriad of data out there. And so we get that in the report in terms of the exams that you look at and then how you delve down. I really miss that little triangle. Leslie's smiling because I said this last year, but it was, when we say that we're proficient or had 1 year of growth for this amount of percentage of our students, you guys have actually dug in and figured out, well, who are the students that are not there and why aren't they there? I really miss having that. I know we heard it orally, but that was a really good triangle for me. I've also talked about looking at some of the normative standardized data, and you guys know me after 20 years that I don't believe one test tells it all, but it tells us something, especially when you triangulate it. So we've got our data, but I looked at the ACT results and the report card results and the forward tests, and they each tell us something a little different about where we are normatively compared to other folks. And at some point I'd like to explore what that means. Jim, you talked to us about the ACT and why what that measures and what that data tells us is different, because that's based on a 50th percentile of kids that succeed in college, which would make sense in terms of why that would show maybe a lower number than our proficiency in terms of grade level, because they are measuring different things. So I got to wrap my head around, and maybe I can sit down with Jim and Leslie to wrap my head on, like, are we consistent as what we're reporting out in this in terms of what we settled on our competency measure? Is that telling us the same things that we're getting from the forward test or from the school report card or from the ACT results? I hope that makes sense. Because I'm seeing yes, it does, because they're telling a little bit different stories about where we rank. And we don't educate to rank, but when you see data that's different, I'd like to know kind of why it is. And the ACT results make perfect sense. Jim, what I really, really liked along that regard was your annual report, where you start that process, and we've got all those different benchmark and reports measured side by side. And me personally, I'd like to sit down and talk about, okay, why are those numbers different, or are they consistent? Okay? Yeah. Does that make sense when we go through that? and I think that's helpful stuff. I'll echo Courtney's comment about the C's, the 3 C's, and we've struggled with that. And that's part of our committee work, is to make sure we're there. I don't think any of us are comfortable with where we're at right now on that, and so we're working on it, and I think we hear it when we get the reports. So that's a work in progress. As is staffing, as Troy said, when we hear stuff from you about our needs in there, we need to address that, and I can tell folks that we've started that conversation in our staffing committee, and that will get out to the board, because that will assist us then as we move into our budgetary staffing allocation piece. So we're hearing you, tell us that in our reports, and we're working on it. The last comment I had is on our graduation requirement in policy 411, and I was glad to see that there was an item in that in our in-betweener, because this is the witching hour in June of 18 that we've got to start evaluating whether to graduate students based on something more than our Carnegie credits or our 23 credits. I mean, we need to look at whether they're a quality producer in a variety of areas, including media technology, working collaboratively in critical thinking and problem solving, and becoming part of a local and global communities, which was one of the 4 C's, knowledge base in arts and living independently, and employment skills, and character is one of the things that will be a criteria in whether we pass a student on this year for graduation. And so we need to come to an understanding of how that works, as opposed to we've passed 23 credits. And that's something the 4 C's committee, we've got to take a look at. Okay, so that's a go forward. And that means not just at high school, because if that's a high school requirement, we need to start gearing up how we assess from K4 up. We ought to be consistent with that systemically. So, the policy 411 we need to start looking at as we move forward. Those are my comments. I really enjoyed the reports. I really did. They're really good, and it's really good to see the passion that all of you have to teach the students in our district. Any other comments that may have generated? Does that feedback and generate any questions from you? I think Brian will probably work at A-team meeting to kind of work through some of those comments. Right, Brian?
I am so predictable.
Yeah, you are. We know that's how you do that.
We have it on the agenda tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. Great. That takes us to discussion items. Dan, that sure is your request to talk about screen time, and I think that was generated by a New York Times article. But if you could kind of give us your thought, and then we'll figure out where to go with that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I had shared with Steve and Brian links to 2 different New York Times articles back in November, and these articles are from October. In fact, they're from the same date in October. They're part of your packet, but I'm also sending these around in case you haven't had a chance to look at them. They're very interesting. They don't go very in depth into the science, and as I've looked into the science a little bit, just from my, I hate to hear people say this, I'm not a scientist, but I trust the scientists to tell me what they know. Now, scientists aren't always right. Just like we learned that butter was terrible for you and you should eat margarine. And we found out that margarine killed hundreds of thousands of people who would have probably survived longer if they had eaten butter. It's all a work in progress. My concerns regarding this is just to have a conversation with the school board, because this is a scientific area that's developing, is the effect of constant interaction with screens on our kids. There's a broader concern with the constant interaction with screens on our society and the adults here, but I think our concern should be, and I'm sure it is more about how is this affecting our kids? One of the articles is just about a trend in Silicon Valley. And why this is important is because, as we know, Silicon Valley is where these machines, the phones, the iPads, the tablets, and the apps that go on these machines get developed. In the more elite schools, we learn where the Silicon Valley executives and middle managers' children go. The trend is to get the screens out of the schools and at home, out of the kids' hands until they are into high school or in that area. Now, this is not a universal trend, and it doesn't say anything about the science about it, but it says to me there's a social phenomenon that's happening in the areas where they know most about these things, where they develop the apps that are designed to ensnare and entrap and addict our children and ourselves. They know what these things are supposed to do, and they're not supposed to entertain. These things are designed to make money. And they want to get them into our children's hands. And just for a brief moment, coming back to our school district, we passed a bring your own device policy some years back, fairly ahead of the curve on this, that allows kids for their learning purposes, not for entertainment purposes at school, to bring their own device and use it where it's allowed. And I don't know what the particular schools or classrooms allow and device use or encourage device use. And I understand that some of them do not allow or encourage personal devices within the classrooms. Another article on the same date in the New York Times, the digital gap between rich and poor kids is not what we expected. Well, we expected the digital gap between rich and poor kids to be that the rich kids had access to the technology and they would therefore advance in technological and maybe other areas because they had access to the technology, and then the poor kids would there would be a gap there because they did not have access to this technology. What the article is proposing is that there may be a reverse psychology or a reverse phenomenon happening here, and where poorer kids are found to be spending hours more every day on screens than the richer kids, because the poorer kids don't have access to nannies who are instructed to keep them away from screens and to entertain and to give them activities and keep them safe while they're at the park, where the poorer kids use these devices for entertainment for time when their parents aren't home working. When the parents are working and the children are at home, they have to stay indoors more often, perhaps because of the neighborhoods that they live in. They don't have access to the outdoors and the parks as much, so they spend more time on the screens. This is the digital divide that is now developing, the original digital divide in reverse. Another interesting article, and something that I've been concerned with, a related thing in our school district, is the divide between those who have internet access at home and those who do not. And I think we figure about 20% of our students do not have internet access at home or high-speed internet access at home. Do you recall those numbers at all, Brian?
I would say it's a little higher than that. I think closer to 90% the last time we surveyed.
So then about 10% did not have access. That's better. So that's the second article. As luck would have it, there are 2 new articles that came out today that I wanted to mention and bring in as part of the conversation. And one of them is very relevant. It's called, and it's also in the New York Times. This is where I get my little flashes on my addictive device. The New York Times flashes me when they've got a new article. And the title is Screen Time Bad for Kids' Brains? The article basically says, we're not sure. It says screen time affects kids' brains. We're pretty sure of that. But it also says, so does any other activity that you engage in regularly affects your brain. It changes your brain and the way that your brain works. In the last paragraph, it says the biggest downside of screen time is the extent to which it can displace other childhood experiences. To kind of downplays the dangers of screen time and saying that a generation or 2 ago was TV. The TV is rotting your brain. It's sucking out your brain. And maybe that's true. I call it the boob tube because it does not help your brain develop. Some things that I want to just emphasize, even though the science is still new, they have longitudinal studies with many participants where they follow people through their lives or a few years of their lives to try to decide or figure out what effects these new technologies have on kids. One thing that they have found, at least one study has found, is that screen time has a correlation with lack of sleep. Now, the correlation in the commentary that I read was that the 3 to 8 minutes per night that you lose of sleep, or that a child loses of sleep per hour of screen time, is negligible. So if a child uses a screen for 8 hours a day, they may lose up to 64 minutes of sleep. To me, that doesn't seem negligible. It seems like something that we should be concerned about. Now, it's not a cause and effect. The science is not there yet, but we know that there's a correlation between how much time a child spends on the screen, these are studies of children, and how much sleep they get. We also know that these machines that we use for education are also used for social media, communication, and playing games. It's hard to keep a computer from being used for things besides education. John, would you agree with that? So even though we have very smart minds in the school and they're able to keep me from getting into my work network from here because of whatever magic they do in the ceilings, it's hard to keep kids from using these machines, whether it be phones, because you've got your own network. You can't control that from the school. Whether it be tablets going through the schools, Wi-Fi, you can't control how the kids are going to use it in a great way. There's some controls that you can put on it. The apps that are developed for kids and for us are designed to make you want more. It's a science. Every time you get a hit or a like or a response to something that you've posted, or a return Snapchat, you get a surge of dopamine, an endorphin. and it's an addictive substance, and people are addicted to it. It's very, very successful in selling things, in getting you to use the app so that you can be targeted for marketing. You'll be surprised to hear that there was yet another article in the New York Times today that talks about your apps on your phone tracking you. Now, this could be an app that you use to tell you which direction you're going, just as simple as a compass. That app needs to know your location. You can't use it unless you say, yes, you can use my location. Now, ostensibly, it has permission to sell your location, your movements, to anybody that it pleases. So your Compass app could be leading you to get advertisements from businesses that you passed on your way to work. And this is not science fiction. In my business, I'm being sold a product that's called geo marketing or geo something, geo fencing. And what this does is they will sell your ads only to people who come within a certain radius of any place that you choose. So if I pick out a competitor and I say, I want anybody that goes into my competitor's parking lot to get an ad for my business, they will sell that to me. How do they get that information? They buy it from all of these apps. Because your phone is on you and it's got a GPS. And if you turn it on and you have one of these apps on it, it's tracking you. This is happening to our kids. So the sleep thing, we've got the addiction problem. We've got tracking, which means targeting private information about the whereabouts of your kids are not just for you. I mean, that's sold to us in that way, is to say, you always know, you always have access to your kids. Give them a phone. You can look on there and you can see a little dot wherever they are all day. You know who else can see that? Whoever wants to pay for that information. It's not designed for our kids' best benefit. These apps that they use and they want to use and that are addicted to are not designed for their best benefit. And the way that they have access to these is through the screens that we give them. I just want to say, my daughter has a phone that she's looking at all the time. I look at my phone way more than I should. The last concern that I have has to do with this tracking as well, but it's more than just pinpointing your location and telling where that particular phone travels to. It's activities as to what you search, what you buy. You have information out there for anybody to buy that can say, what did this person purchase in the last month? How much are they using a credit card? All of these things, and what did they search for? What terms are they searching for? Is this person looking to buy a car? We can tell by your searches. Are you looking to spend money at high-end retailers? We can tell, by your neighborhood and what you're looking to purchase, whether you're a man or a woman, what sex you are. Well, I just said that. What race you are likely to be, how old you are. They can figure out your demographics really easily just by looking at that information. And this is very valuable to salespeople, but it's also very valuable and key the minor chords to foreign governments. Now, I don't like to be Chicken Little. We are in the middle of a unprecedented attack on our democracy. We've seen in 2016, and now we are seeing more and more of the effects and learning more and more of the backstory of what happened during the presidential elections in 2016, where specifically Russia got information from Facebook and used Facebook, Twitter, as ways to get into the minds of the American people.
Dan, could I have you kind of direct us back to the school district?
To
and
sow
what we're doing?
To sow ideas, false ideas, ideas that are contrary to the things that we should be thinking about and we should be concerned about. So, Steve, to your question, I'm concerned that my kids maybe my kids and the kids of the school district may be being encouraged by the school district to interact with these kind of things. And I would like to learn a little bit more about it and whether the kids are being educated in this area, what safeguards we have for access to the internet, whether we have certain agreements with the software companies that we use for school-based educational programs, and whether that information can be sold or used for purposes other than educating our kids, for selling them things, for selling us things, for selling the school things, so that they can conglomerate that data and sell it to another corporation that can use it. These kind of things. So there's concerns. To wrap up, we know that screen use affects the sleep of kids. We know that the tools that they use on their screens promote an addiction to those tools that affect the rest of their lives and what they pay attention to. We know that those tools can be used to track our children so that they can be targeted for marketing or perhaps other purposes. And that we know that foreign powers can use these same tools to infiltrate and to figure out ways to affect our society from the outside. They're not regulated. So I would like to continue this conversation in a more, organized way. I'm just throwing out some ideas here, some thoughts of mine to hopefully start a conversation.
Dan, what I think the first step would be is you've got some specific questions that you just at the end articulated that you about the district and that you were interested in that. If you could shoot me those questions and we can work in terms of a format of providing, what the district is doing or answers to those questions and use that as a starting base. I'll work with Brian on that. And then we can figure out, where to head in terms of those questions and the information regarding this district's use of technology. How's that?
Steve, I'd like to get some feedback, if I could, if anybody else is interested in this. Because if I'm the only one.
Barb?
Thank you for bringing this information to our attention. And I guess to Dan's list of questions, a question I would have is, I know that we, through educational venues, we do provide information to parents about limiting screen time, shutting off phones, and getting them out of the bedrooms so kids get to sleep. So we're doing our effort to do some education. But I do think the school district is a place where people will look for some leadership on how parents should be dealing with the screen issue, which I believe to be huge and a huge concern. I've said before, not here, but to other people, I'm grateful I wasn't raising my kids when they were young and have to deal with the screen issue. Other than television, all I had to do was not subscribe to cable, and it was pretty easy because everything else was pretty boring on the television. But there are huge challenges for parents, I think, and I think we should be talking about what kind of leadership we can be providing to help parents navigate this.
Anyone else? Okay, does that sound like, Barb, if we get some information and start doing a data pool? So Brian's got your question, and Dan, if you could get more specific the questions, then we can start putting together a response to those and take that where it leads us. Is that a good way to proceed?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to bring this.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, we're into F, information items, 2019 school board election. Brian, is that yours?
Yes. What I'm sending around is just a reminder to board members that we have two positions for the April 2nd, 2019 election. They are both Area 1, Village of Oregon, and the incumbents are Dan Kraus and Krista Flanagan. We have individuals can pick up materials from the district office or download them online to fill out application for our two vacant position or our two positions that are up for election. And I did not check with Gina beforehand if an incumbent is thinking about, or if an incumbent decides not to run for re-election. I know there is a date and they need to fill a non-candidacy form. Do you have that date off the top of your head?
I do, and I did email it to Krista and Dan. Today it's Friday, December 21st by 5 p.m.
And there is no encouragement in that. It's just a part of state law. And if for whatever reason a board member decides not to run the day after, it just extends the period when a possible new board member can fill out an application to run for the board. So just bringing that to your attention. If anyone is interested in the guide for candidates, this clever-looking young intelligent man, young boy, is on the cover, and Katie told me that there was an error in the WASB's material, so they sent out an updated November 2018 brochure. So if you're interested, please let us know. We have several of them. Should I just keep moving?
Keep on moving.
Okay, just a couple of quick items under superintendent's report. Last week, our middle school attended a career fair at the Dane County Coliseum or Alliance Center. It was prepared by the Dane County School to Work program, and it was called Future Quest. I believe this was year 2 or year 3 of Future Quest. And you know the board that I sit on, the Dane County School to Work program. Our director is the individual that works with all Dane County districts to put this event on. It is a big, big career fair. Another item I'll bring to your attention, be an upstander, not a bystander. That is one of the messages from Netherwood Elementary School. And an upstander is someone that doesn't allow bullying to go on. And when they see bullying going on, they stand up for the young person who is being bullied, and they report it to adults. So I know all of you are upstanders, but I really like that program, and it's one of the key one of the key items that's being focused on at Netherwood this year, or this month rather. I'll just underscore a couple of comments that many of you made about the safety plan. That safety plan just didn't happen. We've been working on it for a long, long time, and sometimes I have jokingly kidded Andy and called him the safety czar. I did that for a purpose. Everyone in the district and all of the administrators know they cannot make a change to any safety plans without running them through Andy. We have 7 facilities, soon to be 8. I'm including the pool. Almost 600 employees, and part of the goal is to make sure that we are interacting with all 3 of our municipalities in an appropriate way so that we're using the same terms in the appropriate language, whether it's a hold or any changes that we're making with safety-related issues during the day. Andy and the team have done a tremendous job of getting us on the same page. We formerly had a red crisis plan. I think some of you saw the red crisis plan. It was likely 4 to 5 inches thick, and while it was important, we need it to be operational, and we need people to know what to do in the event that we have a safety-related issue. So hats off to Andy and our team that have been working on that plan. If you have a free moment in the month of December, you can look at our calendar and see the numerous concert opportunities that we have. There's a concert tonight at Brooklyn Elementary School, and if you have an opportunity, please take that opportunity. It will put a smile on your face, and you will walk out of the concert less tired than you walked in. I guarantee it. The last 2 last items, the Student Achievement Report feedback. It's not just limited to tonight. If you have feedback for any of us, just route it to us. We are constantly, not every moment, but constantly looking at student achievement data for the purpose of making sure that our students grow and advance and learn. And there's likely no measure that's more important than our ability to have connected with parents and students in the educational process. I was personally pleased to hear that you know that we know our students, and that is just a critical part. It's going to become even more important as we grow from 4,100 students to 6,000 students over the next 10 years. And then lastly, I could use a lot of words to describe this. I'm not going to use words. I'm going to use a video. And before Andy cues up this video, the design team, which is chaired by Leslie, Andy, and Carrie Majeski, has been working with our faculty and a few parents to design the new elementary school. It is a completely faculty-designed school, which is exactly what we did in 2014. Courtney and I had the opportunity to visit with the Bray Architects on Friday and to take a look at where things are in the process, and one of the things that they showed was something they showed to the design team before, and we would like to unveil a quick video of the new elementary school. And I'll turn it over to Courtney first. The key part, we didn't pay for this video. Like 20 years ago, this video cost $30,000 or $40,000. Now it is common practice in architectural firms to do this. It's put together similar to some of the videos that we've put together. It has some animation in it. We'll see if you can see the leaves fluttering in the wind. And before we get to that point, I'll turn it over to Courtney for a couple of comments.
And just as a prelude to that, I asked Courtney if she would, and part of the board's responsibility is to kind of check in on the design with that, given her architectural background, and so she's done that. I think she's going to tell you a little bit about it.
I just wanted to have this chance to kind of cue up the video. As Brian said, it's really, you're going to be really, I hope, delighted with what you see. The meeting that we had with the architects was really wonderful for me as an architect, because we really dove in great detail into the concepts behind the building. One of the things that they shared, in addition, as Brian said, to working very closely with the design team, with Carrie and some of our staff, is that they sort of tried to remain true to several concepts, but the most important concept was connectivity. And they wanted this building to be about connecting to the community, connecting to nature and having opportunities for kids to connect to each other and the adults in the building at every opportunity. So you're going to see as this moves through the video how nature really moves really seamlessly through a lot of the building. And the biggest, I guess, other thing, sort of overarching concept, is the fact that this is going to be a net zero building. And that, we learned, is the correct comment. Net zero, not zero net. So that means this building is going to be state-of-the-art, efficient. One of the things that I really liked was the materials that they showed us that they've already selected for the interior and the exteriors of the building are very much found in nature. A lot of stone products that are wood or look like wood in a few cases. But the building is really going to be fabulous, and they are very proud of it. They have worked very, very hard on it, and they said to a person on the design team that this is the favorite project that they have in a very busy architectural office. So that's saying something. So with that, I think we should show the video because it's really cool.
This is the front of the building.
Needs music.
Doesn't need music.
Go ahead, sing.
You're now walking up the main entrance. That is the main entrance right in the front.
One of the other things that we learned as you're looking through this is that there are a lot of up-to-date security features, kind of pursuant to our earlier conversation about the safety plan, and they were telling us about those in detail as we walked through the building. Right there is a butterfly garden, I believe. There are lots of planned outdoor spaces. There's a tree room, the butterfly garden, the interior courtyards, of which there are 3 inside the building. I don't think you see that on this video. All have distinctive purposes, and the building is kind of organized around the concepts of wind and light and water. And I can't even go into some of the detail, but they had really great ideas about connecting curriculum to those concepts and how those things sort of move through the building. And I think you can see it's a pretty cool looking building.
We're on the east side of the school right now, and we will swing around the back side going west. We're now in the back of the school. It's a 2-story facility.
And the woods is right, we're looking at it from the woods right now?
Correct.
From the vantage point of the woods behind it?
And that cantilever that's coming up in the center of the screen is the Discovery Center. Correct, Andy?
They call it the nest.
The nest. The nest? The nest of the Discovery Center.
Oh, is that cool?
Discovery
What-
Center
what's in there?
/ library.
Oh, wow.
Now we're moving west on the backside, and you will see an amphitheater right outside the art classroom coming up on your right. We're now on the west side of the school.
This is in the interior, right?
This is exterior.
Oh, exterior.
So the Five Oaks
Yeah.
Conservancy is to your back.
Yep.
Okay, there you have it very quickly. I would be happy to send this video to all of you, except it's really complicated to get it to run on your computer. But if you'd like to take a look at it again, just let Andy know. I don't know that we can email it out just because of its size.
Basically half a gig, but if you had a zip drive or something like that, I'd be happy to give it to you. This was a little jerky because of the transmission. On my screen, it was very smooth. So, if you want to take a look at it, feel free. Let me know.
But there will be more to come with, a floor plan layout. They obviously have the floor plan already set, and we'll continue to provide you with updates as we move forward through this process.
It seems big. It's long. It's long because we need southern exposure, and we need a lot of it, and so that was kind of longer and narrower. Correct. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it has some, like Courtney said, it has some internal courtyard areas that give it some depth, but lots of natural light, both from the north and south, in a lot of classrooms.
That concludes my report, unless there's a few questions.
Really cool. Yeah. So, and we've got drawings being done, and the goal is to get out for bid early so that we can jump ahead of the rush. And
the plan is to do 2 bid packages, and the first package will be out in February, and then the second package, May, June, as soon as we can to get the construction started.
Good. And security is going out, and maybe a sale in January, probably, for securities.
Oh yeah, the bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going January, maybe the beginning of February, and then we'll try to close. I can't remember if it's beginning of March or end of March.
March 1st.
Yeah, March 1st.
Andy and I were talking about long-term rates are diving, so we're at a good point in time right now.
Yeah, depends a little.
Yeah. So I think we're hitting at a good time. Okay, taking us to closing G, future agenda. Our next regular meeting isn't until January 14th, so everybody have a great holiday season. Board, we're going to be meeting Wednesday at 6:30 here in that room. Okay, so everybody should have notice of that. And then we have a closed session immediately following when we recess out of here. After this, we'll go over. We're not going to be coming back into open session for that. If anybody has, we haven't put together an agenda for January yet, I don't think. And we're so far out, but we'll get that out to you before the end of the month. And as Brian and I will be talking, if you have anything you want to put on the agenda, let me know. Check out Dan, Troy, Courtney, Barb.
If you haven't seen the new bathrooms, the new showers and pool, they are really nice.
Yeah. Tim.
Just from my work with the Village Park Board, I can tell you, as we look at new places for new school facilities, there continues to be lots and lots of interest in outdoor athletic space. Lots and lots of interest, a lot of competing for the same project. So as this begins to unfold, I'm sure that we will be hearing more and more from others in the community.
Krista.
Just a couple things. I was very sorry to miss the meetings where you did the reports, because those are always really, really informative. But a couple of things I wanted to share is one of my other hats associated with the school district is being on the board of Friends of Oregon School District. And so, as you know, Courtney and Troy mentioned in terms of our staff and the relationship they have with students, I'm pretty lucky in the fact that with Friends of Oregon School District, we have what's called a Champions Fund. So that is a fund that is available for kids to have opportunities like their peers. And so when you talk about our staff knowing kids, I just want to talk with you about some of the requests that we've received since the start of this school year. So to tell you kind of how well our staff know our kids and what they're doing for them. We've had requests from two staff members to have us pay for kids to get driver's licenses. because their family can't afford for them to do that, and they need to get driver's licenses so they can get to work to help make money for their family. So staff has recognized that. One kid in Oasis to go to a hip-hop seminar because they think that that is something that's going to shine a light for that kid, and that might be something that they do in the future. Clothing, to pay for a physical for a kid to be in sports. Instrument rental, so kids can play musical instruments in our school district, and then eyeglasses. A kid broke her eyeglasses in school, and the staff recognized that her family could not afford that, and so they asked us for money so that child could see. So when we talk about connection with kids, we have staff that are going above and beyond that recognize that our kids need these things, and they reach out to us, and we're happy to help. So I think that's just a whole nother level above, you know, competency and things that our teachers are doing to really help kids be able to focus on learning. Then the second thing was this last month we had what was called Friendsgiving. So it's to raise money so kids can have food over school breaks. And when we talk about approving a calendar where we're giving double days off, which is great for families, but you think about kids that go home that don't have any food because they're not in school because they can't do free and reduced lunch and get breakfast and lunch. And so this community, individual donors and businesses raised $6,500 over 3 weeks to help our kids have food at home. So that tells you the kind of community we have here and the teachers and the work that they're doing. So I just think it's really important as board members that we are aware of that and know what our teachers are doing and how much this community really values the families and giving kids an education. So.
Terrific. Let's end on that live. Thank you for all you do with the friends and all the folks there who convey convey our thanks to them, because they're really doing special stuff. So we're going to take about 5 minutes. Board members will meet over in the small conference room for our closed session at that point in time, and will not return to open session.